Alright, let's go. Number 10. The Bone Flute of Divje Babe, the oldest music on Earth. And it wasn't made by us. In 1995, archaeologist Ivan Turk was excavating a cave called Divje Babe in northwestern Slovenia in a sediment layer undisturbed for approximately 60,000 years. He found a cave bear femur with 2 complete holes and the remnants of 2 more, evenly spaced along its length, consistent with the placement of finger holes on a wind instrument. The bone was dated to between 50,000 and 60,000 years before present. The Neanderthals occupied this cave. Modern humans had not yet arrived in this part of Europe. The flute, if it is a flute, was made by a species we spent most of the 20th century categorizing as cognitively primitive, incapable of symbolic thought, lacking the neurological architecture for music. The bone is in the National Museum of Slovenia in Ljubljana. Musicologist Bob Fink argued in 1997 that the spacing of the holes corresponds precisely to a diatonic scale, the same scale underlying Western music. If correct, the fundamental musical framework used by Bach, Mozart, and every pop song produced in the last century was not invented. It was rediscovered. But here is where the real silence begins. The debate about whether Divje Babe is a flute or a bone gnawed by a carnivore is ongoing. The scientific community is divided. And that division is more disturbing than either answer alone. Because if it is a flute, we completely misunderstood the Neanderthals. And if it isn't, we have to explain why a carnivore gnawed holes at precisely the right spacing to produce a diatonic scale. The bone sits in Ljubljana, silent, offering nothing. Number 9. The Jiahu flutes. The perfect scale that shouldn't have existed. For 5,000 more years. In 1986, archaeologist Zhang Zhuzhong was excavating a Neolithic site in Henan Province, China, when his team began pulling crane wing bones from refuse pits. Not whole bones, carefully worked bones, each transformed into a wind instrument with between 5 and 8 precisely bored holes. 30 instruments total, the oldest dated to approximately 9,000 years before present. In 1999, musicologist Garmin Harbison played the best-preserved Jiahu flute under controlled conditions. The instrument produced a complete, accurate, 7-note diatonic scale, accurate to within a fraction of a semitone of the modern equal-tempered system. 9,000 years ago, someone in Henan Province had solved acoustic engineering. But here is where the comfortable explanation falls apart. The consistency across all 30 instruments, different makers, different time periods within the site's occupation, suggests this was not accident. It was a tradition, a transmitted body of knowledge about how sound works inside a tube of bone, how hole placement controls frequency, how a specific diameter produces a specific note. Knowledge precise enough to be taught, learned, and maintained across generations. The flutes are in the Henan Museum in Zhengzhou. The most intact specimen can still be played today. The music it makes is 9,000 years old. Nobody alive knows what it meant. Number 8. Lascaux and the Acoustic Principle, the cave that was built to sing. On September 12, 1940, 4 teenagers in the Dordogne region of France followed a dog into a hole and discovered approximately 600 paintings and 1,500 engravings dated to 17,000 years before present. The world called it the Sistine Chapel of prehistory and moved on. The world was looking at the wrong thing. In the early 2000s, archaeologist and acoustic researcher Yegor Reznikov walked through Lascaux humming as he went. He mapped where sound amplified and multiplied back on itself. Then he mapped where the art was. The correlation was statistically overwhelming. The densest, most complex paintings are located almost exclusively in sections with the highest acoustic resonance. The blank walls are nearly empty. The people who painted Lascaux chose their canvas based on how the stone responded to sound. But here is where the full implications arrive. Lascaux was not a gallery. It was an instrument. A performance space selected because, in certain chambers, the right sound fills the space and bounces back from every direction simultaneously. In those chambers, 17,000 years ago, in complete darkness, lit by a single torch, someone made sound and painted the visions that arrived. Reznikov's findings have been replicated at Altamira, at Font de Gaume, at Pechmerle. Cave after cave, art correlates with resonance. The Paleolithic artists were not decorating walls, they were engineering acoustic experiences. The caves are still there. The resonance is still exactly where Reznikov mapped it. The performance is still technically possible. It has simply been without performers for approximately 15,000 years. Number 7. Stonehenge and the Lost Sound. The acoustic reconstruction of a demolished instrument. Stonehenge is one of the most studied structures on Earth. We know when each phase was built, where the stones came from, what astronomical alignments they encode. What we could not study until recently is how it sounded. Because Stonehenge in its current state is a ruin, approximately half the original stones are missing. The complete circle was never experienced by any living archaeologist. In 2012, acoustic engineer Bruno Fazenda and colleagues at the University of Salford built a 1:12 scale physical model of Stonehenge in its original complete form. Then they conducted acoustic experiments. The results: the original Stonehenge, when complete, had an interior reverberation time of approximately 0.6 seconds, similar to a modern concert hall. The sound inside the complete circle was dramatically different from the open-air acoustic environment outside it. Drums, voice, bone flutes, skin drums, the specific instruments Neolithic British people used would have reflected and amplified inside the complete circle in ways that produced an experience unlike anything available anywhere else in the landscape. But here is where the discovery becomes genuinely haunting. We will never hear the real thing. The missing stones cannot be replaced. The specific acoustic experience that tens of thousands of people traveled to Stonehenge to participate in for 1,500 years of its active use is gone. The people who authorized its gradual dismantlement for road building and local construction did not understand what they were destroying. We have the model. We have the simulation. We do not have the sound. And the people who designed that sound left no record of what they were trying to achieve. Number 6. The Bronze Age lures. The paired horns that only work together. Beginning in the 1790s, lures, large bronze horns, began emerging from Danish peat bogs. By the time systematic cataloging was complete, over 60 had been recovered from Scandinavia and northern Germany, all dating to approximately 900 to 500 BC. Up to 2 meters long, curved in an elegant spiral, cast with extraordinary technical skill. They always come in pairs, left-hand and right-hand versions, mirror images, made to be held side by side. When historians played them together for the first time, they discovered what the Bronze Age makers had encoded in the design. The two horns, played simultaneously by two players facing each other, produce a specific harmonic effect. The tones interlock. The resonances reinforce each other. A single lure played alone produces a sound. Two lures played together produce something categorically different. A drone that modern acoustic physicists describe as producing standing waves in the air between the two players. But here is where the archaeology makes this disturbing. The lures were deposited in bogs deliberately, not lost, not discarded, placed, often in pairs, submerged together in water. Someone chose to put these instruments that only work together, specifically designed to require two people simultaneously, into the ground together. Why? We don't know. The culture that made them left no writing. They left spectacular metalwork, elaborate burial customs, and complete silence on the question of what any of it meant. The lures are in the National Museum of Denmark in Copenhagen. They can be played. The sound they make is genuine Bronze Age acoustic engineering. The ceremony they were part of is gone, and the water that preserved them is the same water that buried the only people who knew what they were doing. Number 5. The Aztec death whistle, the most terrifying sound in ancient warfare. In 1999, archaeologist Lorena Mendoza was excavating a site near Mexico City connected to Ehecatl, the Aztec wind god, when she found a ceramic object in the hands of a sacrificed skeleton. The object had been cataloged decades earlier as a decorative skull-shaped ornament. It had been sitting in museum storage, unexamined, since the 1960s. Mendoza blew through it. The sound has been described by everyone who has heard it. Recordings are widely available as a combination of a human scream, wind through a narrow passage, and something that activates a specific neurological response that bypasses rational processing. Acoustic analysis confirmed that the Aztec death whistle produces frequencies in the range most associated with the human stress response. It sounds in a way that is physiologically not metaphorical, like a person in the moment of mortal terror. This is what Aztec warriors blew before battle. Hundreds of them, simultaneously. But here is where the acoustic weaponization becomes fully visible. The death whistle was not simply loud, it was specifically tuned. The frequencies it produces correspond to the range that triggers the human fight or flight response most efficiently. Contemporary Spanish accounts of first contact with Aztec armies describe a specific psychological response to the sound. Not simply fear, but disorientation, the body reacting before the mind could process what it was hearing. The death whistle is in the National Anthropology Museum in Mexico City. Replicas are commercially available. The recording is on YouTube. Listen to it with headphones in a quiet room, and pay attention to what your body does before your mind contextualizes it. The instrument is still working. The army it preceded is gone. The neurological response it was designed to produce is not. Number 4. The Hurrian Hymn, the oldest complete song, and what it tells us about who we are. In the 1950s, archaeologists excavating the ancient city of Ugarit in what is now Syria recovered a clay tablet unlike anything found before anywhere in the world. A complete piece of music. Not a description, not a reference. A cuneiform notation system encoding melody and lyrics simultaneously, with dedication to a specific deity and specific performance instructions. Tablet H.6, Hurrian Hymn number 6, dated to approximately 1400 BCE. The oldest complete song ever recovered. Dedicated to Nikal, the moon goddess. Musicologist Anne Draftcorn-Kilmer spent decades decoding the notation system and published her initial reconstruction in 1974. The hymn can be performed. It has been performed. Recordings exist. But here is where the weight of this discovery becomes something more than musicological. The Hurrian Hymn was not written as an artifact. It was written as instructions. Someone in 1400 BCE encoded a specific piece of music specifically so that someone who was not present at its composition could recreate it. That act, creating a physical record of sound so the sound could survive, is the same act underlying every piece of sheet music ever written, every digital audio file ever encoded. The impulse to preserve music, to insist that a specific arrangement of sounds was worth saving, worth transmitting, worth hearing by someone who hadn't been there, is 3,400 years old in documented form, and almost certainly much older. The tablet is in the National Museum in Damascus. Someone 3,400 years ago wanted you to hear this, and now you can. Number 3. The Psychailos Epitaph, the oldest complete song with words and music intact, and it's about accepting death. In 1883, a British railway engineer named William Ramsay was conducting survey work near Aden in what is now Turkey when he discovered a marble column being used as part of a flower pot. The inscription included musical notation. The Psychailos epitaph dates to somewhere between the 2nd century BCE and the 1st century CE. It is the oldest complete musical composition in the world, with both intact melody and intact lyrics. The ancient Greek musical notation system has been completely decoded. The melody is fully recoverable. The inscription reads, "While you live, shine. Have no grief at all. Life exists only for a short while, and time demands its toll." That's the whole song. A grave marker, set to music, with complete notation so it could be performed. Psychailos wanted his memorial heard, not just read. He wanted it sung. But here is where the existential weight descends. The column was subsequently lost. A later researcher found it being used as a flower pot. It was threatened by a development project. It was finally secured in the National Museum of Denmark in 1966. For approximately 80 years after its discovery, the oldest intact song in human history was holding dirt and roots. The song takes about 45 seconds to perform. Recordings are widely available. The melody is simple, direct, and has been described by every musician who encounters it as immediately recognizable as music, not as a historical curiosity requiring anthropological translation, but as something that sounds like a human being expressing something, directly, to whoever is listening. Sikelos wrote a song about not grieving. He encoded it to survive. It was used as a flower pot, and it still sounds like someone talking to you across 2,000 years about the fact that time passes. Number 2. The bullhorns of Çatalhöyük. The instruments built into the walls. At Çatalhöyük, the 9,000-year-old settlement in Turkey where 8,000 people lived above their buried ancestors, archaeologists found cattle horns embedded in interior walls, skulls mounted above sleeping platforms, horn cores projecting from plaster pillars. The standard interpretation was ritual symbolism. That may be true, but here is where acoustic analysis changes the picture completely. Ethnomusicologist Rupert Till conducted acoustic testing in the Çatalhöyük reconstruction at the Site Museum and found that the horn installations were not inert decorations. They functioned as resonators. The specific placement of horn cores in plaster, at specific heights, at specific angles, captured and amplified specific frequency ranges within the enclosed space of a house. Different arrangements produced different acoustic effects. The people of Çatalhöyük were building their sound environment into their architecture. The instruments were the walls. The chamber was the instrument. Less than 5% of the total site has been excavated. The horn installations analyzed represent a fraction of the total acoustic architecture of a settlement occupied continuously for approximately 2,000 years. We have found the instruments. We have not yet understood the music. Number 1. The Divje Babe question. What it means that we still don't know. We began in a cave in Slovenia with a bone that may or may not be a flute. We end there, because everything else in this video depends on a question that the bone at Divje Babe has not answered. The question is, when did we start? When did the impulse to organize sound into pattern become part of what we are? Was it 17,000 years ago at Lascaux? Was it 60,000 years ago in Slovenia? Did it arise once and spread? Or did it arise independently, repeatedly, in every human population that has ever existed, because the architecture that produces it is built into the primate brain at a level that predates language? But here is where the final turn arrives, and it's not the one you expect. In 2009, researchers studying infant development published findings that human newborns respond preferentially to rhythmic sound patterns over random noise within hours of birth. Not days, hours. The response is present before any musical learning could have occurred. The preference for organized sound, for pattern over chaos, for rhythm over randomness, appears to be a default setting, not acquired, present from the start. Which means music is not something humanity invented. It may be something humanity is. The bone at Divje Babe is in Ljubljana. It is 60,000 years old, and it may or may not be a musical instrument. The question of whether the Neanderthals sang is still open. Every answer archaeology has found so far has moved the beginning of music further back. There is no reason to expect the next answer to be different. 10 discoveries. 10 windows into a dimension of human history that archaeology almost missed because we were looking at the objects and not listening to the spaces between them. A Neanderthal bone that may be a flute. 9,000-year-old instruments that solved acoustic engineering. A cave system selected as an amplifier. A circle of stones designed as a concert hall. Bronze horns that only function as a pair. A whistle still triggering the stress response it was built to produce. The oldest notation system. The oldest complete song. Instruments built into plaster walls. And a question about newborns that suggests the whole thing was never invented at all. What all 10 entries share is the same uncomfortable implication. We have been studying prehistoric humanity by looking at what they made and what they ate and who they killed. We have been reading their garbage, their graves, and their weapons. We have not, until very recently, been listening to them. And when we started listening, when researchers actually made sound in the spaces where prehistoric people made sound, the caves answered. The stones answered. The instruments answered. In every case, the acoustic evidence suggested not random noise-making, but deliberate, sophisticated, intentional manipulation of sound and space for purposes we are still working to understand. The Paleolithic is not silent. It never was. We just forgot that it was speaking in a frequency we stopped listening to. The caves are still resonating. The lures can still be played. The death whistle is still working. The Sekilos epitaph can be performed in exactly 45 seconds. Somewhere in a museum in Ljubljana, a 60,000-year-old bone is waiting for someone to settle, once and for all, whether it was ever played. We don't know yet. That is the most important sentence in this video. After everything we've recovered, after every acoustic analysis, every musical reconstruction, every recording that lets you hear something 3,400 years old in your headphones tonight, we still don't know when it started. If you want to see more videos like this, click the video on screen now and make sure to subscribe.